Imagine this. Right now, over 100,000 people are waiting for a life-saving organ transplant just in the U.S. And tragically, every single day, an average of 17 of them will die while still on that list. That's
Yeah.
terrible. Well, that's a stark reality, isn't it? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the incredibly complex world of organ donation. We'll be, sifting through your shared sources to truly understand not just the what, but the profound why behind this critical medical frontier.
Yeah, it's a mission-critical deep dive for us today. We're going to navigate the current landscape, um, dismantle some incredibly pervasive myths.
There are quite a few of those.
Oh, definitely. And confront a few uncomfortable truths, and crucially explore tangible solutions to this persistent organ shortage crisis. What's truly fascinating, as our sources reveal, is how often, like, deeply held public perceptions can clash quite dramatically with medical reality.
Right.
Our ultimate goal here is really to arm you with a clearer, more nuanced understanding of a topic that, well, at its heart, it touches every one of us.
And we've got a really rich tapestry of sources for this. I mean, everything from hard medical reports and academic papers to compelling news articles and even extensive public discussions online.
Mm.
It gives us a really well-rounded kind of 360-degree view of both the challenges and, the immense opportunities in organ donation.
Okay, let's unpack this and get started. So, we begin with that staggering number again. Over 100,000 Americans waiting for an organ,
Yeah.
with thousands dying each year while still on the list.
Oh my God.
It's not just a statistic, it feels like a profound human challenge.
It absolutely is. And what our sources really highlight as the core of the problem is this massive chasm.
Mm.
You've got roughly 90% of U.S. adults saying they support organ donation.
Which sounds great.
Right. But then only about 60% are actually registered donors. That substantial gap, that space between saying, yes, I support this, and actually taking the step to register, that's the core dilemma our sources point to.
And it's not just about like a simple lack of information. Often it's about deeper psychological barriers, maybe the discomfort of confronting mortality, cognitive biases perhaps, or just the inertia of, not getting around to acting on a belief.
That makes sense.
Our deep dive really reveals that addressing these underlying human factors is just as crucial as, just debunking the myths themselves.
That's a huge disconnect, yeah. And it really speaks to the power of these deeply ingrained beliefs. Even for those of us who think we're fairly informed, it's surprising how persistent some myths are.
Hmm.
Our sources clearly identify them as major barriers to registration, so let's maybe tackle a few of the most pervasive ones head on. First up, this idea that I'm too old or unhealthy to donate. A lot of people assume their age or medical history just automatically disqualifies them.
Yeah, that's a massive misconception, and it really does keep many potential donors from even registering. What our sources reveal, though, is that virtually anyone, regardless of age or medical history, can register as a donor.
Anyone.
Pretty much. The transplant team makes the final evaluation at the time of death, looking at specific organs and tissues. You might be surprised there's no set age limit. We found this incredible story of a U.S. man who donated a liver at 95.
95.
Wow, exactly. Very few medical conditions entirely rule out donation. If one organ isn't viable, often others or various tissues still are. It's all about suitability at the moment of donation, not some blanket disqualification beforehand.
Okay, that's incredibly reassuring to hear. And here's another one that often comes up. You see it in public discussions, and it keeps people from signing up.
Wow.
This fear that organ donation destroys your body or interferes with an open casket funeral. What do our sources say about that? About how the body's treated?
Right. Well, the reality is your body is always treated with the utmost respect throughout the donation process. Organ or tissue donation typically does not interfere with customary funeral plans, and yes, that includes open casket viewings. The surgical procedures are performed by skilled professionals, and the body is meticulously restored afterwards. The concern is understandable, of course, but the process is handled with real dignity.
Good to know. Okay, another significant barrier. This one stems from religious concerns. The belief that my religion doesn't support organ donation. What do the sources tell us about where major faiths actually stand?
According to our sources, this is another one that's largely a myth. All major religions actually support organ donation, viewing it as a final act of profound compassion and generosity. They generally see it as a selfless gift of life to another human being. That's a powerful message, especially for people with faith-based concerns, showing that their spiritual beliefs often align beautifully with the act of giving.
That's a really powerful point. But okay, moving from spiritual considerations, this next myth is particularly damaging, I think, because it hits right at the trust in medical professionals. The fear that doctors won't try as hard to save me if I'm a registered organ donor. That's a deeply unsettling thought for many people. How do our sources address it?
Yeah, this one is unequivocally false, and it's so crucial to emphasize this because, like you said, surveys show it's a significant barrier. Medical professionals are ethically and legally bound to save lives,
Yeah.
period.
Right.
Patient care always, always comes first, regardless of donor status. The decision about organ donation, that only comes onto the table after all life-saving efforts have been completely exhausted and the patient has been declared clinically and legally deceased.
So there's a clear separation.
Absolutely. There's a clear wall between the medical team fighting for the patient's life and the organ procurement team. They operate entirely independently.
Okay. And what about a related concern, the financial one? Organ donation is expensive for my family. Is there any cost passed on?
No, absolutely not. That's simply untrue. There is zero cost, none whatsoever, to the donor's family for organ or tissue donation.
Yes.
Zero. The Organ Procurement Organization, the OPO, covers all expenses related to the donation process itself. This completely removes any financial burden, making sure the act of giving life isn't met with, economic hardship for the family left behind.
That's good. That's very clear. What about fairness in the system, though? You hear worries that maybe connections or money play a role. I've seen this concern pop up in the sources, this idea that wealth or celebrity might influence who gets an organ first, the whole rich and famous get special treatment worry. Any truth to that?
Our sources make it abundantly clear that this is another myth. Organs are matched to recipients based only on objective medical criteria.
Like what?
Things like wait time, blood type, height, weight, medical urgency, geographic location relative to the donor, other specific medical factors. It's not about wealth or social status. The system is designed to be equitable, ensuring organs go to the most medically appropriate match based on a national computerized waiting list.
Okay. And finally, there's this deeply unsettling idea of a black market. Is there any evidence for the claim that there's a black market for organs in the U.S.?
Okay, fact. It is absolutely illegal in the U.S. to buy or sell organs for financial gain. And there is no documented case of this ever happening within the ethical regulated systems here.
Right.
However, it's important to distinguish this from the global picture. Organ trafficking does exist worldwide, unfortunately, often involving coercion and criminal networks. We've seen reports from places like India or allegations in Kosovo. But that is criminal activity operating completely outside any legitimate medical framework.
So it's different from the regulated U.S. system.
Entirely different. It's crucial not to conflate criminal trafficking elsewhere with the highly regulated ethical donation process in the U.S.
Okay. So we've systematically kind of dismantled these pervasive myths, which are clearly huge barriers. But even with these facts laid bare, we still have that significant gap between support and actual registration. Which brings us to a crucial question. How does our current system for organ donation in the U.S. actually operate? And is it truly serving both the individual and this urgent public need?
That's exactly where we need to go next. So the U.S. operates under what's called an opt-in system. This means you, as an individual, have to explicitly register your consent to become an organ donor.
You have to say yes.
You have to actively say yes, most commonly when you're at the DMV getting or renewing your driver's license. It's an active choice you have to make to get that little heart symbol put on your ID.
Right. And what are the core issues our sources highlight with this opt-in model? I mean, on the surface, it sounds straightforward enough. You just make a choice.
Well, the problems, as our sources dig into, are actually pretty significant. Firstly, it inherently narrows the potential donor pool. A lot of willing individuals just aren't sufficiently informed at the right moment, or maybe they simply don't get around to completing the registration process.
The inertia you mentioned.
Exactly. And this is critical because only about 3 in 1,000 registered donors actually die in circumstances that allow for deceased organ donations, specific medical conditions, usually in a hospital on a ventilator.
Wow, only 3 in 1,000.
Yeah, it's a small fraction. So we need an incredibly wide pool just to meet the existing demand. Secondly, and this is a point of real contention in the sources, even if you have registered your decision,
Yes.
your family can, in some situations, override your wishes after your death. Now, the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act, the UAGA, is meant to protect a donor's autonomous choice. It says your documented desire cannot be overridden.
But
But states incorporate that law with varying degrees of strength.
yeah,
So unfortunately, in many practical scenarios, family intervention is still possible, which can definitely infringe on an individual's right to decide for themselves.
that seems like a major hurdle if your personal decision clearly stated can just be overturned like that. That leads us directly to the alternative, the opt-out system, sometimes called presumed consent.
Yeah.
How does that work, and is it presented as a viable solution in our sources?
So an opt-out system basically flips the default. It presumes consent for organ donation unless an individual actively registers their refusal. So everyone is considered a potential donor unless they specifically say no.
Okay.
We've seen global examples. Spain is often cited as a success story. They have an opt-out policy but place a really strong emphasis on familial consultation rather than just overriding. It's more about involving the family in the process.
I see.
Singapore also adopted a variation back in 2009 and saw their cadaveric kidney donations triple. Interestingly, they even built in exceptions, allowing religious groups like Muslims to explicitly opt out if it conflicts with their beliefs.
But implementing this in the U.S. sounds tricky.
Very tricky. Our sources highlight significant challenges. For instance, Texas tried to pass opt-out legislation, HB 1938, back in 2017. It failed. Why? Mainly due to really strong concerns about individual liberty, potential coercion, and privacy.
People felt forced.
Yet opponents feared it would essentially force people into becoming donors, even though the proposed bill included ways to opt out. It touches a nerve about government presumption versus individual choice.
So it really boils down to that balance, doesn't it? Individual freedom versus the collective good, the urgent medical need. Did the medical community weigh in on this, maybe through the AMA? What about safeguards?
Yes, they did. The American Medical Association, the AMA, actually supports presumed consent, but with a big condition: if robust safeguards are firmly in place, such as broad public education campaigns, making sure people fully understand the system and their choices, and also, critically, having an accurate, easily accessible, and well-documented process for individuals who do choose to opt out.
To protect autonomy.
Exactly. It's essential to preserve individual liberty and genuine choice within such a system.
Yeah.
Without those safeguards, the trust just isn't there. And, a crucial point that just ramps up the pressure on this whole discussion is the time factor. The viability of organs is incredibly time sensitive.
Right, you can't just wait around.
Not at all. A heart, you've got maybe 4-6 hours after death for transplant. A liver, maybe up to 24 hours. Kidneys, 24-36 hours typically. Yeah. Corneas last longer, up to 14 days. And tissues like bone or skin can be preserved for years, but for those vital organs.
The clock is ticking?
The clock is absolutely ticking. Every minute counts in the procurement process. This urgency just underscores why clarity, consent, and efficiency are so paramount.
It's clear this is a deeply emotional and really personal topic for so many people. Our sources show that alongside the medical facts and statistics, there are also these very real fears, sometimes even accusations circulating, particularly online, about the donation process itself. For some, it genuinely represents a kind of terrifying truth they're wrestling with.
That's absolutely the case. And our sources really delve into these significant public concerns. Often they're fueled by reports or maybe misinterpretations of reports, suggesting organs might be harvested from people declared dead prematurely or who aren't really dead enough, especially in cases of what's called circulatory death.
Can you clarify that? Circulatory death versus brain death.
Sure. So circulatory death, or DCD, donation after circulatory death, is when the heart and lungs have permanently stopped functioning. This is distinct from brain death, where all activity in the entire brain has irreversibly ceased. Both are legally accepted definitions of death.
Okay.
Medical professionals universally emphasize that both declarations are based on incredibly strict, legally defined medical standards. They ensure the donor is unequivocally deceased before any organ recovery begins. The issue raised in these public discussions isn't usually about the definition of death itself.
It's more about
fears regarding compliance with those rigorous standards, and sometimes maybe the pressure medical staff might feel in high-stakes situations. As one really powerful commenter noted in our sources, people need to have near absolute confidence in the ethics of the program, or it's doomed.
wow, that's a heavy statement.
Isn't it? It really highlights how fragile public trust can be and how quickly legitimate fears, even if they're based on misunderstandings, can potentially erode confidence in the entire system.
Absolutely. And it emphasizes that critical point. It's not enough for the system to be ethical. It has to be perceived as ethical by the public. And these online discussions clearly show where that perception might be under strain. You also mentioned a distinction that comes up, for-profit tissue donation versus nonprofit organ donation. How does that play into public anxiety?
It's a really important point, and it causes confusion. The perception of any for-profit activity in this space, even when it relates to processing or distributing tissue, which can involve commercial entities, can unfortunately cast a shadow of doubt onto the entirely nonprofit, highly regulated organ donation system.
Guilt by association, almost.
Sort of, yeah. People hear for-profit, and a certain level of skepticism naturally arises. Add to that the documented governmental pressure on the nonprofit organ procurement organizations, the OPOs, to continuously increase transplant numbers. Well, it creates a complex environment. Good intentions, like wanting more transplants, can sometimes paradoxically fuel public anxiety about ethical boundaries and whether corners might ever be cut.
That clarifies things a lot and really underscores again that building and maintaining public trust is just paramount.
So, okay, given these very real fears and the political hurdles facing a full opt-out system in the U.S. right now,
Hmm.
what are some perhaps more measured intermediate stepping stones for reform? What do our sources suggest could help bridge that critical gap without sacrificing autonomy or confidence?
Yeah, there are definitely alternatives discussed that try to balance individual choice with the public health need. One is mandated choice, sometimes called required response.
Mandated choice.
Yeah. This system doesn't presume consent like opt-out does, but it requires individuals to make an active choice, a definite yes or no at specific unavoidable points, like when you renew your driver's license or maybe register to vote.
So you can't just skip the question. Exactly. The idea is to eliminate that "I just never got around to it" factor and ensure everyone actively engages with the decision. It directly addresses the problem of unknown preferences, which is a big part of the challenge now. Another approach that gets discussed involves additional informed consent requirements. Basically, providing much more comprehensive, easily understandable information to potential donors than, say, just a quick checkbox at the DMV.
More than just check here.
Right. This would mean detailed info on how the procurement process actually works, clear ways to change your decision later if you want to, contact information for relevant organizations. Our sources identify these 4 key elements for truly valid consent. Adequate disclosure of all the relevant info.
Okay.
The decisional capacity of the individual making the choice, using understandable language, not complex jargon, and ensuring the choice is genuinely free and voluntary.
That makes sense.
It also raises important questions like, is a quick signature on a form really sufficient for something this significant? And are, say, 16-year-olds applying for their first license truly equipped to make this decision without more context and education?
That's a fair point. And it seems like all these conversations naturally lead back to the power of public education, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Our sources consistently highlight that campaigns focusing on truly addressing these knowledge gaps, these common misconceptions we talked about, have been shown to significantly improve public perception and promote awareness. They encourage more people to register, but to do so feeling genuinely informed and confident.
Exactly. And ultimately, this deep dive really reveals this profound tension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have the immense, undeniable medical need for organs and the incredible life-saving potential of donation on one side.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other, these deeply personal fears, very real ethical complexities, and significant policy challenges that are just inherent in our current system.
And right there, within that tension, lies immense power. Because your decision, the listener's decision to be an organ donor, is a truly powerful one. Our sources constantly remind us each donor has the potential to save up to 8 lives through organ donation
8 lives.
and enhance over 75 more lives through tissue donation. But as we've discussed, it's a decision that ideally should be made not just with compassion, but with full awareness and, crucially, unwavering trust in the system.
So maybe here's a final thought for you to carry forward from our deep dive today. Given this urgent, persistent need and the very real public apprehension we've explored, how much more could we genuinely achieve if we, as a society, prioritized comprehensive, transparent education about organ donation? An education that doesn't just present facts, but truly listens to and actively addresses the public's fears.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that building that deep, unwavering trust is the ultimate, perhaps often overlooked, key to finally bridging that critical gap between those desperately waiting for a gift of life and those who hold the incredible power to give it?